It is cold in my room. Oh, oh, I turn off the heat where I don't, until I need it.
Right. Yeah, I have my heater on in my space, so
Oh, yeah, I am frugal. Okay. Oh, my goodness. But okay. All right. We are up in. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Christmas time, Christmas time. You know I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't have a tree up this year, but I do have a lot of decorations up. It is very, very exciting. And of course, to our Jewish brothers and sisters, happy Hanukkah to you. And I guess after Christmas, we will be moving into the cultural celebration known as Kwanzaa. So much, much, much love to everyone. But, this is in the Christian calendar, we have two high holy days, and that's Easter and Christmas. And so, I take my Christmas holiday very, very seriously. It's an opportunity for us to get together with our families. feel blessed to be with my family every year that the Lord keeps us all together. And I'm thinking about that in a special way as we think of Rob Reiner and his wife, Michelle. All of the joy that their work brought to us down through the years. And you could see the pain that they were dealing with in their home. And just pray for all four Reiner children. It is four. He adopted Penny Marshall's daughter when he was married to her in the 70s. So it's actually four Reiner children. And even though one is alleged to have killed his parents, that's a family in a lot of pain today. Please think of them and send some prayer and love their way, um, to all four of them, all four of them, all four of them, and all the people who they have touched and who love them. And thank you for all of the work that you've done on and off screen, Mr. Reiner. So much work that he did to lift up humanity. Everything he did. The thread that went through his film was love and equality and fairness. He never did anything that diminished the culture. Everything he did, if you look at his body of work, lifted us up. Think about that, everybody. We should all be so privileged to let that be the epitaph written on the stone of our lives. Sending you much love, Carol. I know happy Hanukkah to you, my sister from another mister. She always sends me Christmas cards, Bryce Green. I love Carol and Robert and Snowman. And I believe it's RJW949 sending you all so much love. Everybody, like and share the show. Thank you so much for liking and sharing the show. I need you to help us with the algorithm. You all have liked and shared the show so much. Bryce Green, we're getting hundreds of thousands, if not a million views and more for different shows. And we thank you for that. Please continue to like and share the show. Progressive shows like this, we get kind of jammed up in the algorithm. And Dave Dowling said, "Oh, he's so glad to have Bryce Green back on the show. He's here every week. And so he can't wait to hear what you have to say. Please, please, please stay tuned for this because we're going to talk about Venezuela. And we need to talk about uh, America's efforts to have hemispheric power, really. We haven't seen anything this that has been such a naked grab at power really since the implementation of the Monroe Doctrine, or have we? We've done it in ways that were sly, but now there's no hiding it. Will Congress vote to launch an official war on Venezuela, and upon what basis? Do you even know why we're there? We keep looking at oil, and as I was sharing with you, Bryce Green, I did not know that this mineral, coltan, COLTAN, which is a vital mineral in all electronics that we use. Well, guess where it's found? Congo and Rwanda. Did we not cut a deal with them last week? Yeah, and Venezuela. There's a lot going on, everybody, and we need to talk about it. We need to know why the administration is putting so much pressure on Venezuela. And are there some other political reasons? President Maduro is a full on freedom fighter, a full on progressive. Internally, everybody has issues within their country, but he has stood with the beleaguered peoples of the world. Could that be part of the reason? There's a lot to talk about today. And of course, it's always, always a joy to talk with this young man. So brilliant. Fairness and accuracy in reporting. Soon to be PhD. Can't wait for that to happen. But that's day by day by day. And we love it. We love it. Bryce Green at the Green BJ, everybody, on social media platforms. You can catch him on Substack. You can catch him on X. Tangle with him at your own risk. But it's always a joy to have you back on the show as you are here every week. And I want to find out from you. You know, this week um, it appears that there will be a vote about war on Venezuela, not with Venezuela, but President Maduro has called up the people of Venezuela, and it seems that they are willing to fight to keep their country to themselves. Talk to me. What are we looking at here?
Right. So this week, the House, the U.S. House, is voting on a bill to prevent Trump from actually launching a war in Venezuela. We've been seeing this ramp up to war. We've been seeing these reports about Trump examining different options to go into Venezuela, be it bombing, sending in special forces, or making a deal with their military, or what have you. The Congress, members of Congress, are pushing back against that. They're saying that since this war has not been authorized by Congress, you can't go and do that. The vote is on Thursday. It's a bill introduced by a Democratic representative, Jim McGovern, and it's co-sponsored by Republicans, including Thomas Massey, of course, a Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was on her way out, and a guy named Don Bacon, whose name I don't know. But in any case, this bill has bipartisan sponsorship. It's an open question to see how much support there is in the wider Congress, because unfortunately, the anti-war wing of the American political class is pretty muted, right? It's pretty marginal.
Mhm.
That's why Trump has been able to operate by murdering boats on the high seas and giving all this bellicose rhetoric. He's been able to do that really without challenge from Congress. But this part of Congress, this anti-war wing, is putting forth this bill, and it will vote on Thursday on a war powers resolution that explicitly blocks the Trump administration from launching these attacks on Venezuela and Venezuelan infrastructure. This is a positive thing, and if you're really
Mhm.
passionate about this, I recommend you call your House member and say, "Hey, you support this bill. You don't support the Trump administration's uh, uh, march to war in Venezuela. You've seen this before, even as he talks about, the drug trafficking or the Cartel de la Sol, whatever, these fake justifications for these wars. The American public should not stand for this. And there are members of Congress who are putting up a vote. So everyone should support this bill.
Well, let me ask you this. Are you surprised by the framing of this vote? That is to say, to have, well, Thomas Massey, I think, is a man of tremendous principle. And I really do appreciate his stances. Everybody, I don't have to agree with everything that you do, but when I agree with you and where I do, I stand 10 toes down with you. And there are some things that he has done to me that have been worthy of acknowledgement and really of our appreciation. And Marjorie Taylor Greene. And you have some people who have said, when you said that you were running and you were going to stop these foolish wars and we were going to stop these overseas adventures, we took you seriously.
Right.
Not to mention the fact that we can't afford it, but there, there, there's a group of Americans who really, this is what they really, really, really did believe, Bryce. And so it's interesting to see not whether we should go there, go to war, but they're saying, wait a minute, no, we need to vote not to do it. Is that surprising to you?
Well, it's not surprising that there is uh, a groundswell of anti-war sentiment in America.
Mm.
Most Americans have been vehemently against much of the war state that has been developing over the last 2 decades, really
Mm.
over the last 100 years or so. Much of the American public has been in favor of more social spending at home and less foreign entanglement. That's been the case across the political spectrum, Republican, Democrat, Independent, for most times. There have been exceptions in which massive propaganda campaigns can get the American people to support a war. You saw that in Iraq when
Mhm.
a majority of Americans supported like toppling Saddam because they believed he had WMDs. But we're not seeing that now. What we're seeing is the American public seeing through the Trump administration's nonsense and actually uh, we're seeing some members of Congress actually take up that public support and are pushing back and using their congressional authority to oppose these wars. That's a healthy development. What's really surprising is that there's not more members of Congress who are in favor of blocking the Trump administration's march to war. They all know, like what you said, that the U.S. can't afford it. This won't end well for Venezuela. This won't end well for anybody. The only people it'll end well for is the war profiteers, and down the road, the mineral, the hydrocarbon, and the geopolitical interests that have every interest in destroying Venezuela, regardless of what happens to it. Those are the only people who are going to win in this. So it's surprising that not many more members of Congress are actually embracing the anti-war sentiment of the public and saying, no, we don't want to go to war.
But are you really surprised that, as powerful as the military industrial complex is, are you really surprised that these congresspersons are not going with their people? I mean, because unless we raise our voices and, as you
Maybe
said,
that's a bit of
oh,
a rhetorical trick. I'm not
well,
actually surprised.
well, but
The Congress goes against the people on almost every major issue: the
everything.
corporate control, health care, military spending. I say I'm surprised because it's surprising if you think about it from a bird's eye view. You
Mhm.
see, so this so-called democracy so opposed to what the general public is in favor of.
Mhm.
It might be surprising, but that's been the name of the game in America for quite some time. I mean, you know about the infamous 2014 Princeton study that found that
Mhm.
public opinion, the general public opinion, had almost no effect, actually zero demonstrable effect on what policies end up getting passed by the Congress. That kind of flies in the face of whatever vision of democracy you have. But that's how you get this war state. That's how you get this $1 trillion military spending bill. That's how you get these millions of people being displaced. That's how you get a genocide in Palestine. That's how you get people being thrown out of their home. Like it's all part of the same anti-democratic structure that sits atop all of American politics.
Well, what are we looking at? Are we looking at America trying to have or achieve hemispheric dominance? I mean, just from the north to the Central Americas to South America. Is that what we are trying to do? Because I mean, now I'm wondering if the Trinidadian government will survive because they're going against their own people, and um, and they're giving the United States cover. What is the end game here with the United States? Do you have any idea?
Well, in this case, I think we should take the Trump administration's national security policy document at its word. The document, while it says makes a lot of overtures towards reverting America's role from a global policeman, et cetera, and ending foreign entanglements, it's actually very clear about its goal that it doesn't want any sort of peer or near peer competitor to arise on the world stage. And so all that rhetoric about ending Americans' foreign entanglements, it's just that, it's rhetoric. And what they're talking about is um, ensuring that America and its sphere of influence, especially in the Western Hemisphere, is as tightly controlled as ever in order to prevent something like China or Russia or any independence movements, any uh, anti-American or multipolar movements from gaining a greater hold on the world stage. Venezuela sits at the intersection of a lot of those trends and a lot of those interests. It's in America's backyard, check. It's a socialist government, check. They're building relationships with China, check. They're building relationships with Russia, check. They're also controlling their own resources and not giving the wealth of those to Western corporations, check. But also just having those resources and being a massive strategic um, uh, mine essentially for the world. They have largest oil reserves, massive gold reserves, and these minerals, like you talk about, coltan. That's one of the reasons that Venezuela is such a hot commodity on the world stage. So it intersects with all of these other imperatives that I talked about, combating Russia and China, maintaining hemispheric dominance. If you want to do all that, you need resources, and you got to make sure that your enemy doesn't have those resources. Venezuela has those resources, and so that puts them in the crosshair. They have the resources, they're independent, they're aligning with America's enemies, and so that's what we're seeing. It's part of hemispheric dominance, which is also a part of global dominance. And this is that policy that I was talking about that Americans are so opposed to. And that's probably why the Trump administration ended up putting that rhetoric into their national security document, because the public is so opposed to it. But their actions speak louder than their words, and they are continuing the ramp up to war in Venezuela in complete opposition to American public opinion.
How are they justifying this?
Well, this time they are giving a redux of WMDs. I'm sure you've seen the rhetoric about the Venezuelan government's role in fentanyl, even though, of course, if you look at the US government's documents, almost all of the fentanyl coming to America comes over the Mexican American border in cars driven by American citizens. I mean, it has nothing to do with Venezuela. They are accusing the Venezuelan government of running a drug cartel and getting drugs like fentanyl into the Americas, and the murderous strikes on those boats over the last few months. There have been almost 22, 23 of them. I'm beginning to lose count. But these strikes are justified by saying that these are drug boats carrying drugs to to the United States. And this logic, of course, completely falls apart. They A, provide no evidence, but B, these boats could never have made it to the Americas. I mean, they're tiny speedboats. They don't travel thousands of miles over sea. Um, but they're also justifying it by saying that the Venezuelan people, of course, want democracy, and that's where you get the Nobel Prize winner, um, Machado. She
Mhm.
is a total thrall of the West. And in fact, a poll recently found that 90% of Venezuelans actually have an unfavorable view of her, which, I mean, it should be noted, far less popular, far more unpopular than Nicolas Maduro. So
But wait a minute,
it,
how did
these
she get
justifications
that?
are nonsense.
How? No, 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 no. Let's not go past her. Let's not go past Mrs. Machado, because I want to know how the Nobel Committee reached over all of the people who could have gotten the Peace Prize this year and found her. Someone most Americans have not even heard of. And yet she is really someone who is extremely supportive of the West, of the United States coming in and overtaking uh, the natural resources of her country. She wanted Israel to come in and lead a coup on her country. Who is she? And what is going on with the Nobel Committee?
Well, there's a long history of the Nobel Committee and the Nobel Prize being used as a way to legitimize or promote American foreign policy interests. I mean, just look at some of the previous winners: Henry Kissinger, Barack Obama. I mean, these people aren't peacemakers. They don't deserve any prizes for making peace. But
Mhm.
that committee exists to legitimize people in foreign policy that usually the West is in favor of. I mean, that's really what it's for. And the fact that she got a Nobel Prize, The
Mhm.
reason that they do that is because that prize has a lot of legitimacy in the American public. A lot of them have no idea where it comes from or what it is, but they hear Nobel Prize winner, and that confers an air of legitimacy. Well, if you give that label to someone who's trying to further American foreign policy goals, well, then that means those foreign policy goals then have that air of legitimacy. Nobel Peace Prize winner calls on American intervention. Well, for many Americans who, don't have a critique of empire, don't really understand how the country works, that seems like a great deal. You have to give this champion for peace a chance at peace in her country. That's why they give these people the prize. It has very little to do with genuinely recognizing people whose achievements in peacemaking and achievements in humanitarian goals. Sometimes people who do good work get the prize, but the
Mhm.
fact that it's been able to be so rigged, I think, really gives the game away.
Absolutely. We're talking with Bryce Green of Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting about Venezuela. What are we doing there? Will Congress vote to stay out? Will the president pay attention to them if they vote in that direction? We have to see. We have to talk about that. What are the implications? Why are we even there? And what? Let's go back to the Monroe Doctrine because many people are saying that this harkens back to that. I don't know if we ever really abandoned it, but could you help us with that, Bryce Green?
Right. Well, this is this question of hemispheric dominance that I was talking about earlier, and that you brought up. The fact is that the Monroe Doctrine has been the guiding principle of America's foreign policy towards its southern neighbors since its implementation in the early 1800s.
Hmm.
James Monroe essentially declared that the Western Hemisphere was to be free of European intervention, and only the United States would it be the dominant power presiding over it. In, of course, your history books, you read about it as some sort of benevolent, uh, anti-colonial move by the United States, but in reality, it was a declaration of a territory, a sphere of influence that was to be dominated by the American powers. And in the centuries that have followed, the Americans have acted in those interests in every sense of the word. Ever since 1898, with the expansion into Cuba, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico, and further with in the early 1900s with interventions in Honduras and Venezuela. A brief pause in FDR's good neighbor policy, but after FDR, we went right back to intervening in Latin America and overthrowing governments, supporting dictators, all for the purposes of keeping this area poor, underdeveloped, and to the extent that it would be developed in the interest of American and Western capital. That has been America's relationship. That is what the Monroe Doctrine looks like, and that persists to this day. In Venezuela, it's especially acute because Venezuela is an openly socialist country. They've declared that their natural resources, that their country's wealth, belongs to the country and not to the consortium of Western financiers and corporations that would love to get their hands on it. This is a major affront to the Americas, to the United States. They believe that they have the freedom, the right to exploit all natural resources. If you're not letting American corporations in, that means you hate freedom, and so they have to go. And that's how we're seeing this. That's we saw this with the first Trump administration's attacks on Venezuela. They tried to get a guy named Juan Guaido to declare
Hmm.
himself the president, and then supported by only outside powers, had very little support inside of the country. And so this woman, Maria Machado, she's basically filling in those same shoes. In fact, recently it looks like you put up the a comment that maybe she's a CIA operative. I
That's from
mean,
John Holliman. There he is. He said,
yeah, and I
maybe.
think I think that's a perfectly valid presumption. Maybe not exactly the CIA, or maybe not this or that agency, but she's certainly working on behalf of Western interests. I mean, she's openly said that. She's openly said how she wants Venezuela's resources to go to uh, to go to American corporations. she recently was part of some operation to get her out of the country and go to Norway for this, uh, the Nobel ceremony thing. But they called the operation. I think it was Operation Dynamite.
Yes.
To get her out of here. There was a BBC report on it a while ago, but this was a few days ago. But I mean, like the involvement of intelligence agencies seems, I mean, kind of presuppose if you have the American empire saying we want to attack this country, that's what the intelligence agencies are for. They're figuring out the best way that they can go about attacking the country. And so, in my view, she should be, even if there's no document that says, like, oh, she receives a check from central agency, centralintelligence.gov, whatever. Um, she's very obviously acting on behalf of Western interests. And so she should be treated as such.
Does she say why she's so supportive of Western interests as opposed to her country's own interests?
Well, they frame it and people like her. You see this in many sort of U.S. backed opposition figures, is that they say that they have the interest of the country. They say that they have the interest of her people. They say that they have uh, only sovereignty in mind when they're doing these sorts of things. But in reality, what they're talking about is a very narrow strata of people. It's the same thing that American politicians do when they say the American people support X, Y, and Z. The American people support bringing freedom and democracy to Venezuela. The American people support Israel. They're referring to a very narrow strata of the population, and she represents the upper middle class, the bourgeois of Venezuela, the people who are basically the political class, the capitalist class, who stand to gain dramatically if the Americans were to pour in investment and pour in capital at the expense of the Venezuelan people. That class of people would benefit a lot. They'd be hired as managers. They'd be hired as, and they'd be brought in as investors. That's who she represents. And so when she says that, oh, my people yearn for freedom, she's talking about them. That maybe represents 10, 20% of the population. The rest of the public, of course, is very much against, having their country blown up. I mean, plain and simple. And
Mhm.
that's this divide that we're seeing.
Well, so where are we here? I mean, you've got, as John has noted, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the Secretary of State having these briefings. I don't know what they're telling um, our elected leadership, but uh, it seems that there is still a schism um, with, people don't have the appetite for war, Bryce Green. So I'm wondering how, if we're just going to continue to bomb, and what does this mean uh, to Russia, who just had a conversation? President Putin just had a conversation with President Maduro, and according to these reports, it was a conversation in which he reaffirmed his support for the people of Venezuela. What does that mean?
Well, it's unclear how the Trump administration, or how soon the Trump administration, is going to move against Venezuela. There's been all these reports about these internal discussions. These reports typically don't come out unless someone in the intelligence agencies want them to. It could be a psychological campaign against Maduro. There
Mhm.
was that report. I think I brought this up last week, that Maduro had offered to leave and only wanted to to take $100 million with him and whatever, and the U.S. rejected this. But these stories are, it's difficult to say. Maduro confirmed that they talked with Trump, but it's not clear that they came to any agreement. But given the fact that they're moving aircraft carriers, they're moving all this military material, they're moving all of this, and they're ramping up the public relations campaign to support this war. It reminds me, and I wasn't there as an adult, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it reminds me of the run up to the Iraq War, in which these
Yeah.
military justifications were coming out, these intelligence reports were coming out, all of them. You have the New York Times telling you it was going to be a cakewalk and how important it was that they overthrow Saddam Hussein. And it seems that it's a lot like that, and that despite all of the justifications eventually and quickly at the time being understood as bull, uh, that didn't matter. The decision to invade had been overdetermined, and so if that decision has been made now, the only thing you can do legally is to try and call your House member and to tell them to support this resolution that Congress to ensure that Congress does not allow this war to happen. That's one of the only options if this war is going to go.
If this war does go, you and I were talking before we came on the air about a New York Times piece by Yale historian Greg Grandin, in which he asserts that President Trump's actions, particularly those in Venezuela, in this hemisphere, in the Caribbean, are leading us to World War III. Because I don't think that we really understand um, how connected that part of the world is to Russia and China. Just Americans tend to only see, and we're only given the news about what it is that we do. We don't see that we're only 4.5% of the world, Bryce. And there's a big, 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 big world out
People
there.
tend to forget that we're really a very small percentage of the world.
Very small. So tell me, do you think that he is exaggerating when he says that we could be heading down this rabbit hole into this third world war, or do you think that is that inconceivable to you?
No, it's not exaggerating at all. In fact, every almost all of America's steps on the world stage are leading us to a world in which a global war is more likely, in which people are less safe and the world is more militarized. None of that is uh, none of that is in doubt. The question is only how and to what extent and how long will it take for us to get there. This move in Venezuela is based on, like I said earlier, this global conquest, this hemispheric conquest, which is part of the global conquest. Uh, Other countries in the world don't want to live in a world in which America is the top dog, the leader, the arbiter, the judge, jury, and executioner of entire countries or even small boats. They don't want to live in that world. And for almost a century, the American century, so to speak,
Mhm.
they couldn't do a lot about it. And especially after the fall of the Soviet Union, at this unipolar moment, these countries could not do much to go against what the U.S. dictates were. But that's beginning to change. Russia and China, especially, are becoming major counterbalances to this American pole, and they're able to offer some challenges to it. And so, if America doesn't want to live in harmony with all of these groups, with all these countries, with all these peoples, they're going to start a war. Some way, somehow, they're going to start a war, be it over Taiwan. They'll say that they're going to send weapons to rebels in Taiwan. China has said that that is unacceptable. They're going to continue pouring weapons into Ukraine and try and wrest Ukraine into NATO. Russia has said that that's unacceptable. They're going to continue to try and control the Western Hemisphere. Well, as Venezuela gets closer with China and Russia and Brazil and all of its neighbors, eventually they're going to say this is unacceptable, and we are willing to defend our interest with violence if necessary. There's no reason for the U.S. to pursue this. There's no reason for the U.S. to say yes, we should risk war in Venezuela. Yes, we should risk war in China. Yes, we should risk war against Russia. There's no reason for that except pure imperialist greed and the internal logics of this entire behemoth of the American military industrial complex. But there's no human reason for that to happen. And it's really incumbent on us to stop it.
Well, what are the risks of war for America uh, if America launches a war? If the Trump administration launches a war on Venezuela, what what risks are we taking? Do we even know that we're taking any risks? Do we think that we can just walk into the country and seize their resources?
Well, there's a few different levels of risk, right? There's risk to the credibility of America, which such as it is around the world, is pretty abysmal. But if we nakedly aggress against another country, well, that tanks any credibility and hinders any genuine diplomatic efforts that there might be around the world. So that's one level of risk. Another level of risk is to the soldiers and the people involved, if that's the way they want to go. If they want to send in American GIs into another killing spree, well, the Venezuelan people aren't going to take that lying down. So there's risk to them. There's risk to the American public in the sense that if this war starts costing more than we expect, well, then that's resources and energy and finances that are going to places that are going away from where Americans need it most. So for every person on the street, or for every medical uh, person suffering under medical debt, well, these are resources that could be going to alleviate those problems, but instead are going to obliterate the country. There's also the risk of uh, knock-on effects of destroying a country in Latin America. Lots of Americans are very concerned with illegal immigration and the flow of migrants, usually from Latin America, into the United States. Well, if you blow up Venezuela, if you destroy the country, overthrow its government, well, people aren't going to want to live in such a destabilizing place, and so the trek into the United States will start seeming a lot more, a lot nicer, a lot more of an option, and so that'll increase the migration there. There are all sorts of risks
Mm,
that the American people face with an intervention like this. But of course, the biggest risk of all is the moral risk, right?
mm,
However badly it'll affect Americans, it's going to affect the people of Venezuela a lot more. It's
mm,
going to be, it's going to, if nothing else, it imperils their socialist project. It imperils the many gains that were made under Hugo Chavez and the Chavista regime that's been extant there since then. It endangers their lives if we do a Libya style bombing campaign. There's no reason for us to kill all these people. I mean, it's essentially a policy of
mm.
mass murder for corporations and for people who really like to see the American flag planted places. But there's no human reason for it to happen. And so all of these risks are, I think, readily apparent to us. Even if the news media and people like Brett Stevens in the New York Times are thinking that no, it'll be great. It's just a cakewalk. They should be dismissed. I mean, they're
Well,
they're
no,
they're
but
more.
let's talk about
Right?
that
I mean,
because
let's be serious.
Brett Stevens got space in the New York Times, and he was speaking uh, from a perspective and from a so-called legitimate place. He was signaling. So help me to understand, because there are some people who think like Brett Stevens. What did he say in this particular piece?
Well, I think Brett Stevens wrote the case for overthrowing Maduro. I think that
Yeah,
was Brett Stevens. Let me
that
let me.
was
Yeah, it was Brett
that was Brett
Stevens.
Stevens, and
Yeah, of course. It's hard to get my New York Times hawks. Hard to tell them
keep them
apart from
straight.
each
You
other. Yeah,
can't.
hard to keep them straight. Um, but yeah, he says that the whole idea of overthrowing Maduro is a good idea because Maduro has been so bad for Venezuela, and if America only wants to uh, only wants what's best for Venezuelan democracy, well, then removing Maduro will be the best to do it. I mean, in this article, he even makes a point that this administration justification, the drug justification, is really beside the point and kind of loopy. So he's saying, yes, Trump wants to invade Venezuela, but he's lying about why he wants to do it. But we should invade Venezuela anyway because of
Anyway,
other reasons. I mean, you really can't make this up. These are like insane and depraved people who believe that. It's one thing to believe this as a little kid growing up and watching Iraq. It's another thing to believe this as a grown adult, having watched Iraq, having watched Libya, having watched Syria, Afghanistan, all of these disasters, and then to say with a straight face that what's needed to make the world better is another American intervention in the world, another overthrow. It's like the lanes and the highways. Like one more lane will fix it. One more overthrow. One fewer dictator. That's all we need. But this is what the New York Times is for. right? They're there because they can legitimize this radical point of view from
Mhm.
the American ruling class to a general public. The New York Times reading liberal isn't foaming at the mouth all the time for an American jingoistic invasion, but if they read in the New York Times that oh well, there's actually a perfectly rational reason why we should destroy Venezuela, and maybe the liberal thing to do is to blow up this country. Well, that's what the New York Times is for. It's simple as that.
But, but let's think this through for a hot second, or should I say, let's just take another step. We've already received millions of Venezuelans into the United States. People who love their country, they might not have wanted to leave Bryce Green, but our policies have made it impossible for them to stay. Is that really smart? Because you have people who I am sure on some level have some resentments. Just help me to understand what it is that we're really looking at. John Holloman says, drill, baby, drill. I mean, there's a lot, but that is not our oil. That is not our coltan underneath their feet, Bryce. And one has to wonder what will happen if these people start thinking about that, if they have not already. Just
Right.
help me to understand, because I think, I hope that we understand just how much hubris is on display for us to believe that we can just blow up these ships. They're not even ships, they're boats.
They're
And
little boats, like little speedboats.
but we're not blowing up the oil tankers now. We're seizing those, right? So help me to understand that. We're blowing up the boats with Venezuelan fishermen, but the oil tankers we're seizing. We just seized one. What is that saying to you?
It's pointing at the desperation of the American empire, right? Like I mentioned earlier, Venezuela is this great prize on the in the global Cold War. Like, is Venezuela going to be a non-aligned or BRICS-aligned country, or is it going to be an American colony? America
Mhm.
has its foothold in the country with people like Maria Machado, but the public in Venezuela also has a great foothold by supporting their government. And it looks like the US is trying to force a tug of war, and this time use violence to do it. And by destroying Venezuela, you're able to uh, remove this chess piece from the board, or at least put it on your side. That's what I think we're seeing, and this comes in the context of declining U.S. power all over the world.
Hmm.
Right, this doesn't come in a vacuum. And the fact is, over the last decade, the U.S. is less powerful than it was. The U.S. is reducing the number of allies it has. The U.S. is reducing its relationships with countries like Russia and China. It's reducing its ability to influence somewhere like Europe. It's reducing its public opinion. It's reducing the public opinion of itself in the world. And so America's becoming weaker and weaker as other countries start seeing this new form of development, this new model, this new pathway of development, and interacting it on the international stage. Um, and so the Americans are looking at this and saying, how can we retain our power? They wouldn't be acting so desperate if their power was secure, if they were able to control the whole world like they want to. No,
Mhm.
this is about they're acting this way precisely because they cannot control the world. That's why the American think tanks are writing about this great this general chessboard, this grand chessboard between
Mhm.
Russia, China, and America, mm, because Russia and China are able to compete with America now. And so now that they're able to compete, America's realizing that it has to consolidate its power, rally together what little allies it has left, and defend what's empire it has left, and to push on these areas of the world where it feels are vulnerable. That, I think, is the root of what's happening in Venezuela.
Why did you feel, out of all of the stories that are happening, that we could have talked about today, why is it that you felt that it was, and why do you feel that it is so important for us to talk about Venezuela?
Because this appears like it's going to be the next big U.S. intervention.
Hmm.
This appears like it's going to be the next Libya, the next Syria. Every president has their series of massive interventions, war crimes, and uh, imperialist moves that they put forth. I mean, you can go back. I mean, Trump had his first sanctions war against Venezuela, pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal. The Obama administration had the bombing of Libya, and the bombing of Syria. The Bush administration, of course, had Iraq and Afghanistan, the launching of the global war on terror. Clinton had Yugoslavia. You know, Reagan had all these terrorist wars in Latin America. You can keep going back, but every single president in the United States advances the interest of American empire in some way, shape, or form. Right now, the powers that be seem to have their sights focused on Venezuela, and it's not just American powers, but one of the other interest groups that's pushing this is the Israel people.
Hmm.
They have been trying to overtly link Maduro to Hamas and Hezbollah, right?
Why? Why are they reaching all the way over here to do that?
It's pretty ridiculous when you think about it. But uh, pushing the fear of this non-aligned movement, and pushing the fear of the specter of evil Muslims, even in Venezuela, advances their goals over there.
Well,
If they
is it because he has such a tremendous audience in that part of the world? Because he has been full throated in his support of Palestinian sovereignty. He has been
right.
full throated in his condemnation of the genocide. Is that part of the reason?
Certainly, Israel has what it calls a public relations problem in the world, and in Latin America especially. Have you Gustavo Petro saying that he wants an international army to go and deal with Israel and defend the Palestinians against their attacks. Nicolas Maduro has been steadfast in his support for Palestine. I mean, you can see that in the UN votes and the public statements. This is the sort of thing that Israel wants to reduce to a minimum as much as possible. And plus, one of the other reasons I suspect is that if the U.S. gets deeply involved in Venezuela, well, then there's far fewer eyes on Israel when it comes to Palestine, when it comes to
Hmm.
their fake ceasefire in which they continue to massacre and kill people. Uh, and it also is a way to diffuse the anti-war movement, right? If the anti-war movement
Hmm.
isn't just talking about Gaza, they're criticizing America for something else. Well, then that means that Israel's massive weapons packages get a lot less scrutiny, and so there's all sorts of reasons for people like for countries like Israel to be supportive of this. But that's the Israel lobby. They were instrumental in pushing the America to invade Iraq. That was for more clear, more direct links to the Israeli foreign policy position. But in any case, they remain a significant constituency in the foreign policy formation circles in the American government.
So, as we are looking at this, because a lot of people have a lot of different interests, um, how are Americans supposed to analyze this? Because we on corporate media we hear one train of thought. You know, no one's questioning why we're blowing up these boats. No one is saying that no, they don't produce fentanyl in Venezuela. So saying that they're producing it and this is a some narco drug ring that they're thwarting, that this is not true. I mean, how are Americans supposed to analyze this? What don't we know, Bryce?
Well, I think that this is the thing. I think Americans are fairly clear about what's going on. Is that there is an elite group of people who want to see the American empire span the globe like the British Empire did, and they're willing to sell out the American people, not to speak of every other person around the world, to do it. Right? They're ensuring that you stay poor. They're ensuring that Venezuelans stay poor. They're ensuring that everyone in the everyone else in the world stays poor, while they enrich themselves. That is at the heart of American foreign policy, that has been at the heart of American domestic policy. And that should be the primary lens through which the American worker, the people who are stepped on, the peons, the peasants, like me, that's how they should understand what's going on. This isn't, a well-meaning exercise in promoting democracy or getting rid of a dictator or what have you. This is none of that. If you believe that, then I'm sorry. It's time for you to graduate and you become an adult and learn how the real world works.
Hmm.
They're not doing this because they care about the well-being of people. They're doing it because they care about the profits, the interests, and the corporations at the heart of the American foreign policy establishment. The American people implicitly know this, right? Most Americans, if you ask them, does American foreign policy work for me? They'll say, no, that makes no sense. Of course not. Are you in favor of these wars? Absolutely not. Do you think we should have a smaller military budget? Absolutely. Most Americans will say that, but they're acutely aware that this is not the state of affairs, that however much they want the government to do something or not to do something, their interests have very little effect. So that's nothing new to people, right? The only thing I could offer is just saying that people should organize. People should read about this stuff. People should take to the streets, join your local, answer coalition or what have you. Get
Hmm.
out there and show support. Again, call your house rep and say you want them to support this anti-war bill. These are the little activities that we have left, but we are many,
Yeah.
and the elites are elites for a reason. There are fewer of them.
Well, we're the most, the absolute most.
We're the 99%.
Plus 99.99999%. Really. What do you want us to know before we go?
Just keep up the fight. You follow the news. You can get great news at places like antiwar.com.
Hmm.
I believe they're doing their end of year pledge drive right now, so I'll
Hmm.
plug them. You can also donate to whatever charities. There's all sorts of charities looking out for end of the year donations. So look at your local um, your local activist organizations that are doing it. You can donate to the organizations doing support for Palestine. You can donate to the Palestine Solidarity Committee at IU. We're a nonprofit. You can donate to the Indiana University Divestment Coalition. You
Hmm.
can do all sorts of things to make an impact in the world. And so just don't forget it. It might seem dark. It might seem like the overbearing empire is over determining every part of American foreign policy and your existence and your paycheck and everything, but there are ways that you can fight back. And it's important not to forget that because those are the ways in which you are able to stay sane in this wacky world.
Well, you know what, Bryce Green, I tell you what, my father has always said that if you don't fight, you're guaranteed to lose. But if you do fight, you just might win. And he followed that up with, we have never fought a battle that we have lost. It looked like we were going to lose the Civil War. No, we won that. Jim Crow, we took that down. Women got the right to vote. If you just understand that these movements really do work, but they work when you work it. We have a constitutional republic, not a constitutional monarchy. We're the ones who are supposed to be in charge here. And actually, we are. When we march, everything moves, even the Supreme Court, Bryce Green. Because when black
Exactly.
came back from the Second World War and said, we told you we were not going to fight unless you treated us right. Americans change things. Can you imagine staying off of the buses for a year? Oh, when the bottom line was threatened, this was a bus company that was based in Chicago. They said, no, 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 this has got to change. Let them sit where they want to sit. It became economically unfeasible to have Jim Crow. It becomes economically, you should make it economically unfeasible to be unjust, to raid
Right.
other people's countries and take people's stuff, Bryce. I'm going to let you have the final word. It's not
Yeah.
our stuff, it's theirs.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, like this, the only way that anything good has ever happened in the world is because people fought for it, right? It isn't
Mhm.
because people like heard about it happening and posted about it. It's
Mhm.
because they got up and fight,
That's
or they got up and fought, organized, and so that's the lesson that I think any historical movement should teach us is that we have to make the world better. All these wars coming, all this attack on Venezuela, the genocide in Palestine, all of these sorts of things require our action.
Hmm.
So let's do it.
And you know what? When we decide to act, everything changes. But you can't let up, everybody.
Right.
The price of your freedom is what? Eternal vigilance. What did was a woman who asked this question of Benjamin Franklin from the crowd when he came out of Constitution Hall. And he said, "We are independent. We have our own nation now." She said, "What kind of government have you given us, sir?" He said, "A republic, if you can keep it." Well, what did what did Debbie Allen say at the beginning of that old television show Fame, which predates you by generations, Bryce Green? She said, "You want fame? Well, this is where you start paying. You want America? Well, this is where you've got to make America happen. America doesn't just happen. America is something that you make happen." So, everybody, come on. Justice for everyone. Bryce Green, how can we catch up with you this week?
You can follow me on X. You can follow me on Twitter. Um, I will be doing holiday stuff, so I probably won't be as active. But there
Okay.
may or may not be some pieces coming,
Well,
related to it.
Well, for the next couple of weeks, everybody was going to kind of slow it down. But you know what? What will not slow down is the world. We're going to continue
Right.
to be in touch with you throughout the next couple of weeks. But I am always enlightened by you and so grateful that when I see you, I feel very, very excited about the upcoming generations because I know that the work is going to continue,
Much
even when
appreciated.
I'm out of here. I love it.
I
I'm
appreciate you.
excited. I'm excited. I appreciate you. Bryce Green, everybody. Green with an E, everybody. Please catch up with the Green with an E, BJ, on X. Keep up with him on Twitter. That's right. Dave, that's for you. He said, "Oh, I can't. I'm so glad he's here, but everybody loves you." And Medi, I'm sending you so much love, my sister. Carol, happy Hanukkah, my sister. John Holloman, all of you, all of you, all of you. I love you, love you, love you. Bernadette, so you sneaking on in here. I am Santita Jackson. This is AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Much love and many blessings, everybody.